And we're back. Jeffrey, I want to talk about the Republican side of the race. Donald Trump and Jeb Bush are now in a fight over George W. Bush's legacy.
Such a useful fight, right?
Yeah, what do you make of that?
Well, well, I mean, as you pointed out, it's quite an interesting moment. Jeb is tying himself to his brother, which might work in the primaries, but if he gets to the general, I think that's death. That doesn't do very much for him. But this issue that Trump is centered on has come to the 9/11 issue. It's such an interesting one because there are a lot of things you could blame George W. Bush for. Right, but 9/11 is slightly lower down on the list. The guy was president for 8 months, and when this happened, and if you look, one of the critiques Trump has of Bush is that his immigration policies led to this. Now, the 9/11 hijackers were in America before George W. Bush was president, so that's a bit of a stretch.
Donald Trump making a stretch.
Bush is in a fight with Marco Rubio to be the establishment alternative to Trump. The establishment assumes someday there will be such a thing and that person will end up being the nominee. He's chosen to open another front in his war against Trump because in the Bush world, they believe in the end, why will Trump fall? They believe because voters will say he's not a credible commander-in-chief. Trump opened the door to that attack. It's dangerous for Bush. First of all, fighting a two-front war is hard. And second, he's fought Trump before on these type of issues, and it's not helped him.
And his most animated moments are in defense of his brother, which creates that lock. Yeah. Bob, I want to ask you about, Jeb Bush has tried to get out from under his brother, but this is history. I mean, George Bush was the president when a tragedy happened in America and 2 wars resulted afterwards. I mean, isn't it kind of crazy to think that anybody can get out from a president who presided over such historic times?
Well, I wrote 4 books about Bush's wars, and some of it worked, some of it definitely did not work, like the Iraq War. And but Jeffrey's right. Refighting this, I mean, doesn't work. This is not on people's minds. They want to know: are we going to be safe now? Not whether we were or weren't in the past. And I think again, the Republican Party there's a certain gravitational pull that develops, and it is, let's do something sensible. We want to win the presidency, and the polling and common sense will take you away from Trump getting the nomination, and I think it will, as I was saying, who can stand up and say, I'm like Ronald Reagan, not Donald Trump.
Yeah. Just a very quick point on something that Bob said. It's another example. This is another example of fighting about the wrong subject. In Libya, where we should be discussing the role of interventionism, right? When it comes to 9/11, we should be talking about what do we do to defend ourselves from terrorists without hurting or damaging the Constitution, for instance. And this fight is just a rehash of something that happened. We're not going to fix it by talking about it over and over again.
Mark, we had some fundraising numbers out this week. What do you make of those numbers? Who's any dark horses coming out with a lot of money? And
well, we don't see the super PAC numbers because we don't get those till later, and I think Ted Cruz is probably still doing well there. The fight over who's got 12 million versus 10 million versus 20 million even does not matter. Presidential politics is about earned media. Donald Trump is showing that getting on the news, driving your message personally, being a good candidate matters so much more than raising money for television ads. So I think it's all a bit silly, and the focus on it is a bit silly. Jeb Bush says the ads are going to save him. That's what's going to bring him back. No. No candidate can be revived with ads. It's got to be speaking to the aspirations of the American people.
But what it has become is sort of a proxy for this fight that we talked about earlier between Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush. They're fighting over who raised more money, and I got 0.3 more than you. No, you didn't, because they both want to try and show they're in the strongest position so that when if voters do turn away from Donald Trump and Ben Carson, they seem like the obvious choice.
But no one, Bob, has ever lit the fire of the American imagination talking about dollars and cents of money raised, right?
Yes, that's true. And then when you start doing that, as is well documented under the follow the money rule, it's corrupt. Yeah. It's a process that does, and this is one of the things I think Bernie Sanders in the Democratic debate made a really good point about. People are being bought and sold.
One last question to you, Nancy, before we leave is Paul Ryan, the question for who's going to be the Speaker of the House. Where does that stand before Republicans come back to town?
Well, there is some news on that front, and that is that after weeks, if not years, of saying no way, no how, Paul Ryan is now telling those close to him that he is open to running for Speaker. But there is a big caveat, which is that he's not going to campaign for the support of these 40 or so very conservative members of the House Freedom Caucus. He says he's got a record of conservative leadership. Either they believe in that record or they don't. The problem is they're looking for very significant concessions in exchange for their support. They want new rules, for example. He says if he doesn't get the sense that they're going to be behind him, he'll stay where he is as the chair of Ways and Means, which is someplace he was very happy with.
They've got to come to him, and there's no real other alternative. Thank you all for joining me today. We'll be right back with a look at a key player in the Nixon White House and the Watergate investigation. Stay with us.